Under the human resource and policies, we studied about the various levels that an applicant goes through for acquiring a job and what are the various training techniques that are taught to become more efficient on their job. Now we further discuss the performance of an individual, why it is evaluated and why the performance evaluation is necessary for each and every employee in an organization. Let's start with talking about performance evaluation. Performance evaluation, also known as performance appraisal, serves a lot of purposes in an organization. The major purpose is to help management make general human resource decisions. Evaluations also identify training and development. Evaluation fulfills the purpose of providing feedback to employees on how organizations view their performance. Performance evaluation is the basis for reward allocation as well. Decisions as to who will get the merit pay increase and other rewards are frequently determined by performance evaluations. Each of the functions of performance evaluation are valuable in their own right. What is the need for evaluation? The criteria that management chooses to evaluate when appraising employees' performance will have a major influence on what employees do. The three most important criteria for evaluating employees are: number 1, individual task outcome. If end counts rather than the means, the management should evaluate an employee's task outcome. Using task outcomes, a plant manager could be judged on criteria such as the quantity produced, scrap generated, and cost per unit of production. Similarly, a salesperson could be assessed on overall sales volumes in the territory, the rupee increase in sales and accounts. Number 2 is the behaviors. It is very difficult to attribute appropriate behaviors for employees, so always group performance is appreciated because it becomes difficult to distinguish clearly the contribution of each and every group member. Number 3 are the traits. The weakest set of traits usually used by many organizations is individual traits. Traits such as having good attitude, showing confidence, being dependable, looking busy, or possessing a wealth experience may or may not be highly correlated with the positive task outcomes, but only the naive would ignore the reality that such traits are frequently used as criteria for assessing employees' level of performance. We are going to discuss the various methods of performance evaluation. People differ in their abilities and their aptitudes. There is always some difference between the quality and quantity of the same work on the same job being done by two different people. Performance appraisal of employees are necessary to understand each employee's abilities, competencies, and relative merit and worth for the organization. Performance appraisal rates the employees in terms of their performance. Performance appraisals are widely used in the society. The history of performance appraisals can be dated back to the 20th century and then to the Second World War, when the merit rating was used for the first time. An employer evaluating their employees is a very old concept. Performance appraisals are an indispensable part of performance measurement. Let's start with the first method, which is the critical incident method. The critical incidents for performance appraisal is a method in which the manager writes down positive and negative performance behavior of employees throughout the performance period. The key here is to cite only specific behaviors of employees not vaguely defined personality traits. A list of critical incident provides a rich set of examples from which the employee can be shown the behaviors that are desirable and those that are called for improvement. The second method is the weighted checklist. This method describes the performance appraisal method where, rather familiar with the jobs being evaluated, prepared on the large list of descriptive statements about effective and ineffective behaviors on job. The third method is the paired comparison analysis. Paired comparison analysis is a good way of weighing up the relative importance of opinions. A range of plausible opinions is listed. Each opinion is compared against each in the other options. The lists are tallied and the option with the highest score is the preferred option. The number 4 method is the graphing rating scales. The rating scale is a form on which a manager simply checks off the employee's level of performance. This is the oldest and most widely used method for performance appraisal. Method number 5 is essay evaluation. This method asks managers or supervisors to describe strengths and weaknesses of an employee's behavior. Essay evaluation is a non-quantitative technique. This method usually uses the graphic rating scale method. Number 6 method is behaviorally anchored rating scales. This method is used to describe a performance rating that focused on specific behaviors or sets as indicators of effective or ineffective performance. It is a combination of the rating scale and critical incident techniques of employee performance evaluation. Number 7 is the performance ranking method. Ranking is a performance appraisal method that is used to evaluate employee performance from best to worst. Managers will compare an employee to another employee rather than comparing each one to a standard measurement. Number 8 is management by objectives, or as popularly known, MBO. MBO is a process in which managers or employers set objectives for the employees, periodically evaluate the performance and reward according to the result. MBO focuses attention on what must be accomplished, that is the goals, rather than how they must be accomplished, that is the methods. Number 9 is 360-degree performance appraisal. 360-degree performance appraisal is a system or a process in which employees receive confidential, anonymous feedback from the people who work around them. Method number 10 is the forced ranking method, or forced distribution as it is called. Forced ranking is a method of performance appraisal to rank employees but in order of forced distribution. For example, the distribution requested with 10 or 20% of the top category, 70 or 80% in the middle and 10% in the bottom. So, you have to do the ranking according to the percentage which has been specified. Number 11 is the behavioral observation scales. Behavioral observation scales are frequently used methods. These are the methods of rating of critical incidents that the worker has performed. Some of the suggestions for improving performance evaluation. The performance evaluation process is a potential minefield of problems. For instance, the evaluators can unconsciously inflate evaluations, that is, they show a trend for positive leniency, or they can understate performance, a trend called negative leniency. They can also allow the assessment of one characteristic to unduly influence the assessment of others. Some people base their evaluations by unconsciously favoring people who have qualities and traits similar to their own. Think of them as a process and not an event. Leaders should be laying the groundwork for performance reviews all year long. Leaders practice weekly or even daily rounding for outcomes. In the same way that a doctor makes rounds to check on patients, a leader must make rounds to check on employees. This technique allows you and other managers to regularly touch base with employees, make personal connections, recognize success, find out what's going well, and determine where improvements are much needed. When you build your reviews on a foundation of rounding, they become meaningful. There are the culmination of lots of mini meetings. Neither party is surprised by what the other party says during the reviews because the issues have been raised before, probably more than once. Hold them 4 times a year. That's right. The annual performance reviews should become the quarterly performance reviews. If this sounds like a lot of work for managers, it is. But it is also far more effective than the annual reviews, which too often reflect an employee's performance during the previous month leading up to the meeting. Link reviews to organizational goals. It may seem an obvious strategy, but surprisingly, few leaders structure employee evaluations around concrete company-wide goals. When employees know they are going to be graded on the progress they have made towards goals the entire company shares, they will alter their behavior accordingly. But don't just impose these goals. Get employees' input upfront. This helps employees connect the dots regarding the impact they have in the organization and makes them feel like an important part of the whole. When employees are involved in crafting organizational goals, they are far more likely to understand them, buy into them, and work towards them. And when leaders bring up these goals again and again in performance reviews, it reinforces employee efforts. Make review criteria as objective as possible. One of the major criticisms leveled at performance reviews is that they are based on maddeningly subjective criteria. What do words like communication, organization, and professionalism really mean? Let's talk about managing diversity in organizations. Diversity is beneficial to both the organization and the members of the company or organization. Diversity brings substantial potential benefits such as better decision making and improved problem solving, greater creativity and innovation, which leads to enhanced product development and more successful marketing to different types of customers. Diversity provides organizations with the ability to compete in global markets. A manager can help guide these differences to the benefit of innovation and inclusion in the organization. This includes not only bringing practices but also communication and career development practices over the course of an employee's career with a firm. Human resource (HR) is often tasked with managing many aspects of diversity in organizations, including the attraction, selection, training, assessment, and reward of employees. But project managers and other managers with whom employees directly work or with whom they directly report can also guide inclusion practices. The process of inclusion engages each individual and makes people feeling important to the success of the organization. For example, stereotypes may affect the performance of a team. A person may be misunderstood early in an interaction. Contributions may be limited and specific strengths or talents may be overlooked because they do not seem prominent in the given stereotypical category. On the other hand, poor performance can be overlooked in an individual because they belong to a stereotypically desirable group. Managers can combat this by mixing teams, creating smaller mixed teams for subtasks, monitoring all team members' progress, and allowing individuals to volunteer for roles rather than being cast on according to their default role as defined by their stereotypical category. Diversity training is another way that managers and other employees can manage diversity in the workplace. Diversity training is the training for the purpose of increasing participants' cultural awareness, knowledge and skills, which is based on the assumptions that training will benefit an organization by protecting against civil rights violations, increasing the inclusion of different identity groups, and promoting better teamwork. Let's talk about outsourcing challenges in human resources. Weighing the cost of outsourcing versus the cost to hire employees with the necessary qualifications is a challenge which human resource managers encounter when they decide to outsource department functions. Other challenges include evaluating the outsource provider's expertise and qualifications, quality management, and employee satisfaction. Although these challenges should be addressed prior to engaging the service of an outsource provider, they can be ongoing issues for human resource managers and the provider they select to handle their outsourcing needs. Next, we are going to talk about costs. The decision to hire an outsourcer provider for HR functions isn't always an easy one. Factors to consider include what it costs to engage professional services versus what it costs to hire someone with the expertise necessary to perform the functions. If your organization chooses an outsourced provider to handle benefits administration, for example, the overall cost to provide this service may be higher than the cost to recruit, hire, and train an in-house compensation and benefits specialist. We are going to talk about the outsourced expertise now. Outsourcing any type of human resource function, whether compensation and benefits, employee relations, training and development, or recruitment and selection, requires an examination of the provider's expertise in each area. Some of the most common outsourced HR functions include recruitment and benefits. Throughout your organization's relationship with the outsourced provider, you may have confidence in their expertise as well as confidence that the provider will continue to improve its expertise by continuing education. Human resource outsourcing companies make an enormous amount of money charging large and small companies for their knowledge and expertise in a number of different HR areas. Given the rapidly changing demographies of the workforce, combined with unique needs that every client has, outsource providers should have a system of improving their expertise so that they can meet their clients' needs. We'll focus on employee satisfaction, which is again a very integral part. Employee satisfaction. Discussing employee satisfaction is very important. Employees may feel better about discussing issues concerning health insurance, benefits, and compensation with people they can interact with regularly. Being directed by the HR department to an outside provider for answers to questions about sensitive topics can be unsettling for certain employees. Therefore, it is necessary for an organization's human resource staff to maintain employees' trust by acting as a liaison between the outsourced provider and the employee. Maintaining employee satisfaction is another challenge employers face when they decide to hire an outsourcing company for specific HR functions. Employee satisfaction should be a factor during the negotiation stage and ongoing support for an outsourcing agent.